Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock, and that means it's party time, or at least learning time here at Action Benefits. My name is Randy Lober, Learning and Development Specialist here at Action Benefits, and here to talk with you today about unlocking your next prospect pool using some free tools provided by the U.S. government, namely the Census Business Builder tool. Normally, for those of you who are regular attendees, I am a camera on kind of guy. I think this gives us a more personal touch, but I do have a kid home with pink eye. I may have pink eye too. So we're just taking it easy, and I'm not going to make you see any goopy stuff that's happening here. So you can thank me later, I guess. All that said, let's go ahead and dive in today. Let's talk about where you can find your next prospect pool and highlight some free tools you can use to do so. The back end of today's presentation, we'll spend a little bit of time showing you how you can connect with these prospects and maybe even tell you about some marketing dollars we have available to help you reach those prospects as well. So want to get your brains ready here, ready to engage with me. I have a key question for you, and as soon as you have an answer, please just use that handy dandy chat feature at the bottom of your screen. What would it mean for you, for your business, if you could do any or all of the following? What would it mean if you could identify which zip codes near you have a high concentration of people over age 65? What would it mean if you could visualize which zip codes or census tracts have a median income over that Medicaid threshold and a household size of 3 or more? So if you could zero in some families. Or what would it mean for you or your business if you could determine which zip codes have a median income greater than 50K and a significant uninsured rate? What would that mean for what would any of these mean for your business? Go ahead and put a few words in the chat here. Let me know how these might help you. As a reminder, in that chat box, you do have an option to tell me whether you want everyone to see your response or just me by using that blue drop-down arrow to go either everyone or just host and panelist. I am your host and panelist, so if you choose that option, only I will see your response. And some of you did choose that. And some of you had said things like, well, I know where to spend my marketing dollars, right? I know where I'm going to target my next social media ad. I know where I'm going to target my next mailing campaign, or I know where I'm going to get some boots on the ground, whether it's my own boots or boots of those that work with and for me. And those are all good uses, and that's where I want to get you going here today, to put some of that data in your hands and give you the tools to explore some of that data as you go forward. So our partner today in exploration is going to be the U.S. Census Bureau. And yes, I mean that Census Bureau, the one that does that census every 10 years. We'll do one again here in another few years coming up. But you might not know, or you might not be as aware that they, in addition to that decennial census, right, that every 10-year census, they have about 180 other survey programs that really take the pulse on everything that's going on around our great nation. Of interest to us today, and where we'll play with some data, is three tools or three surveys they regularly put out. And we'll take a look at some tools they use to display that data for us here as well. So one of those is the yearly American Community Survey, which is updated each December. So I had to fill this out in August or so of this year, where the Census Bureau, it does like a mini census, right? They get in touch with select households, take a sample size just to make sure things are going, or see how things are trending in that year for that particular region. And that's one, and that gives us a lot of data about consumers, about individual people, about their demographics, where they live, their education, those sorts of things. There's also a county business patterns census that comes out each June and also looks at non-employer statistics as well. So both of those measures work together to tell us a little bit about how both consumers are faring, but also tells us a lot about which industries are gaining jobs or losing jobs, or which kind of firms are gaining those jobs or losing jobs. And there is also an economic census that is done every 5 years as well. 2022 is the most recent year that data was completed. And because they do a lot of digging into that data will be published, in the next 30 days or so. So I want to give you a sneak peek at what you can dig into there. So I should point out though that all of these, uh, as you know, as a word of caution, all of these are lagging indicators, right? They're showing you snapshots of last December or last June, or in a few months, it'll show you what life was like 2 years ago in that particular area. That's okay, right? It still gives us a little bit of information about where we might want to focus our marketing efforts and where we can find prospects for the various businesses that we're working in. But I do want to be upfront about that, is that you're not looking at real-time data here. The data does take a lag, right? Because there's of the human factor involved in gathering and processing all the data. Where we'll spend some time here today is in a tool called the Census Business Builder, or CBB. You'll hear me refer to it here as well. You can always find it at census.gov/data/data tools/BBB, and that'll give you a whole kind of readout of it if you like. Or you can also go to the address I'm about to put in the chat here, cbb.census.gov. And that's where you'll see me go here in just a moment to start using the tool. So the image on your screen is a really kind of a how-to guide. I'm going to give you a bit of how-to when we go into the tool here a little bit. But this is really, what I put in the chat here is really where you're going to use that tool, where you're going to access that tool. So again, some of the key questions we'll take a look at in the next few minutes is which zip codes or census tracts have the highest concentration of people over age 65. And for bonus, we'll find out which of those areas also have a high uninsured rate. Maybe you want to those could be good areas near you to focus on your Medicare marketing using your carrier approved materials, your CMS approved materials with some mail outreach. Maybe you're working on the marketplace. Maybe you want to know which zip codes near you have median incomes over that Medicaid limit for a family of 3, and you want to know where those families of 3 might be living, right? So you can better focus your efforts if that's your niche. Or maybe you are working in the P&C realm, right? Maybe higher income folks are your target. So maybe you're looking for median incomes over 50K and is a significant uninsured rate. We'll take a look at all 3 of those scenarios here today using Census Business Builder. Knowing though that these are kind of examples, right? There is much more you can do with the tool than what I will show you here today, but today is kind of a little bit of a crash course over the next few moments. As I pause here, I'm taking a look at the chat Q&A. Don't see any questions ready waiting for us. So let's go to the tool and I'll switch screens over to the Census Business Builder. You want to make sure you are seeing that screen and it shows up for you. So I believe you are. Let's go ahead. You are seeing the cbb.census.gov. This is the Census Business Builder. And it does everything it can rather to make your life real easy. You can start off by searching for a location. Maybe you want to build your business in Southfield, Michigan, or Flint, Michigan, or whatever the case might be. You can put in a zip, state, city, county. You can put in a MSA, a metropolitan statistical area. Any of those will work. Or you can take a tour of the screen here. It'll show you everything you can possibly click on here. I'm going to start by looking where we are based here in Action. We're going to look at Southfield City in Michigan. And you'll see that the map zooms right in on Southfield, but it's not showing us anything yet. And the reason why is because I haven't told it what to show yet. Want to go ahead and take you through some of the menus you have all around the screen here that help you kind of slice and dice this data so you can figure out where you want to focus your efforts before we dig into those scenarios. Should point out here that we're not going to touch this much today, but this Custom Industries tab does allow you to search for industries by SIC code. So maybe you were, in looking at our attendees here, probably 70, maybe 60% of you do have at least a few groups on our GA book with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Maybe if veteran-owned industries or veteran-owned businesses is your niche, or female-owned, or maybe you really work well with smaller restaurants, or you work with larger restaurants, or you work with banquet centers, or wherever you've carved out your niche, or wherever you want to carve out your niche in the group market, you can definitely use this tab, the Custom Industries tab, to kind of start playing with SIC codes. If I were to look for insurance over here, it would pop up a variety of sectors here that I could start showing where those businesses are located and going from there. Not where we're going to spend a ton of time today, but do want you to know it's there. In this middle tab here is where we'll spend a lot of our time looking at variables. So if we tell it in the left tab what kind of data we want to see, here is where we kind of slice and dice that data, looking at either consumer data. We can look at business data, whether annually or quarterly. We can look at workforce data. You can define your own variables, look at consumer spending or building permits. You can also make a variety of levels here and choose your scale that you want to look at. We'll spend a lot of time here today at the zip code and tract level, but some cases it won't show you those if there's not enough data available. The Census Bureau does make a pledge not to identify anyone based on that. So if there's only one small restaurant located in the zip code of the census tract you're looking at, it won't show you to that scale. It'll probably show you that at the city or town or county level instead. And secondary variables, again, you can use to draw some comparisons here as well. We will get some use out of the filter function over here, where we get to define and either include or exclude some data. We always have the ability to go full screen and download data over here. We'll use that a little bit later on. Down here, you'll also see some views of the data, so you can see what exactly you're clicking on. When I choose some data to build in here, it'll show us a little bit of a snapshot of that data here, and there will always be a map key that we can use to figure out what exactly it is the map is trying to tell us. First things first, though, I promised that we would take a look at zip codes with a percentage of people over 65. So we are going to take a look, once my mouse cooperates with me and comes back on the screen, we're going to take a look at some data on consumers and residents. So I'm in this middle tab here, looking at consumers and residents, and I want to look at some demographics of this age. So I'm looking at age, gender, those sort of things. And I want to find zip codes who have, I want to look at that measurement of percentage of people who are 65 and older. So this is okay. This is where we kind of want to start our analysis. As I choose that data dimension here, you see the counties or the zip codes start to change their population or change their color here. The legend in the bottom of your screen tells us that the darker the blue, the more of a concentration, the higher concentration of or higher percentage of people 65 or over that live there. Here's where we can get a little bit neater. So this is on the city level. I can also drill down to zip codes. So I can look down at zip codes within Southfield and say, oh, 48034 is a little more rich than maybe 48075 where Action is. That's good to know. And I can also dig down to the census tract, which is specific divisions that are about the same amount of people, all things concerned from the Census Bureau. And I can drill down and find that this area between Northwestern Highway, bordered on the north by probably 12.5 miles between Losser and Telegraph, well, hey, that could be a pretty rich environment for people that are over 65. Even over here, if I were to go up a little bit further and go to this intersection between around 13 and Franklin, again, of the beneficiaries living there, or of the people living there, somewhere between 32 and 37% of them are over the age of 65, which means they're likely Medicare eligible, which means could be a good opportunity or a good area for me to spend some time with mailing campaigns or whatever the case might be. But I also want to know, for example, it's one thing to know where people over 65 live. It's another thing to know whether or not they are currently insured, right? So we can get a sense of how difficult it might be to break into a newer market. So I can also add a filter here, and the filter does not have to be on the same category that you selected earlier. So if I want to filter on consumers and residents, instead of looking at their demographics, age and gender and that sort of things, I want to look at socioeconomic characteristics, and I want to look at the percentage of people with health coverage. So you see up here, I do have a filter that I can work with. Lower bound here is 85.9%. That's the lowest data they have on file for Michigan, all the way up to 100%. If I were to take this slider down, maybe I want to look at zip codes with a insured rate of 95% or fewer. That means that there is some opportunity for me to, reach some people who don't have any coverage. I can see that same zip code maybe is not the best fit for me. But if I were to zoom out a little bit and zoom over to this census tract right here along Northwestern Highway, in this residential area here by Old Franklin, there's some opportunity there. I can also come back up to the zip code and maybe zoom out a little bit and get some more intel here around the area. And it does take a while to populate, but I can see that over here in Warren now becomes pretty attractive to me, right? There's a high uninsured rate, or a relatively high uninsured rate over there, and 20.3% of them are over 65. So right away, those two things together, right? I've been able to take a look at where people are uninsured and where people are more likely to be over 65. And that can give me a good idea of where I might want to spend some efforts with either mail marketing or social media marketing or wherever the case might be to try and build my Medicare book. I want to pause here and check out the chat for any questions or things you might have before we move on to our next scenario. Okay. Then let's take a look at our next scenario. Maybe you're more marketplace focused and you want to look at that under 65 segment of your market. I am just going to get rid of this filter here. So you'll see the data, the map updates here in real time. Instead, what is interesting to me is I want to know a few things. I want to, again, filter by median income here. So again, I'm looking for zip codes that have median incomes over the Michigan Medicaid limit. And I want to look for households that have a household size greater than 3. So I want to filter again by socioeconomic. I'm going to look by median household income. So we'll start getting some data on that here, and you see things change a bit. Again, areas in darker blue have a higher median income. Areas in lighter green have a lower median income. But that lower median income does likely encompass the Medicaid threshold for a family of 3 or perhaps even a family of 4. So I know that these areas might be Medicaid eligible as I work with folks on the marketplace. So if I have just income data here, that doesn't really help me with what I was looking for of people over the Medicaid threshold and people with a household size of greater than 3. So I'm going to use two filters here to help me do that. First filter I'm going to add is looking at still looking at consumers and residents, looking at some socioeconomic data, and looking at household income. And I want to look at people who are over $33,064. That is the threshold for the Medicaid threshold for a family of 3 here in our great state. So you can see some zip codes flashed off our screen. They turn gray. They're not captured in the filter here. And maybe I also want to take a look at the household size. And again, I would find that in socioeconomic characteristics here. I'm looking for average household size is what we're taking a look for. And it's pulling in that data. This is how you know it's a live demo, right? I can filter anywhere between 1.68 to 3.62. In this case, I want to give ourselves a little bit of cushion here. I do want to look for areas that might have families with them, or at least maybe multi-generational. So I will drag this up. And as you see, I may drag this up. Some areas fall off the radar here. I'm going to drag this up to 2.5. That tells me there is likely at least half a child living in that household. Don't ask where the other half the child is. I don't know. But we can kind of zero in here, right? We can see areas that are, again, areas and households that are likely to meet that Medicaid thresholds. They're eligible for marketplace coverage, and there are families there. So I know that I can spend some time with them and help out, right? If helping families up with marketplace coverage is my niche. So I could take a look here in zip code 48070, that is Huntington Woods. If I were to take a look at that, And it, again, that census tract data is available here as well. So you can get really good neighborhood level data. So not just Huntington Woods, but this specific part of Huntington Woods between bordered by 696 Coolidge, 11 Mile, and gosh, I wish I knew what that road was, but if I zoom in enough, it'll tell me. It is Scotia Road over there. If I found out over there, that could be an area for me to take a look for folks, maybe for marketplace coverage as well. Maybe again, though, knowing that that is a higher income area based on the filters I have here, I might want to take a look toward my lighter green areas where my key comes back, and know that I might have some work I can do over here to help families over here in the Hazel Park area. So there's lots of different ways you can slice that data, lots of different ways you can figure out where you can be most helpful and where your business and where your insurance knowledge can really dig in and help folks. Last example we wanted to take a look at today was zip codes of median income of over 50,000 and a significant uninsured rate. So in this case, we are going to, pardon me, keep median income as our variable here. But in this, I want to narrow my filters a little bit. So I'm going to look for socioeconomic characteristics here. Again, look at median household income. And this time bump that filter all the way up to 50K. I'm maybe looking for some higher earners that maybe I can cross-sell some of my P&C business with. And I also want to add that uninsured rate in here. So we're going to, again, filter by socioeconomic characteristics and look for the percent with health coverage. And I want to look for folks with maybe, let's say 93, 92%, right? So I know that I might have some work to do here. So if I zoom out a bit, again, it's going to take a minute for the map to catch up with me as I'm zooming out. But again, your darker areas are going to have your higher income here. Your lighter areas will be closer to that lower threshold that we set. And it looks like the site froze on me here. It's not pulling up the rest of this. Let me see if we can go to zip code and kick it a little bit. And again, this is how you know it's a live demo, right? We'll refresh and see what happens here. While that is working, I should point out that the URL that gets generated, so the website address that gets generated when we are working on data, is unique to every filter you make. So when you run this filter once, for example, when you are looking for your where your Medicare beneficiaries might live, your people over 65, once you have that report built the way you want it, you can simply bookmark that and come back to it whenever you want. That a new URL is generated every time you do something, and you can also save that URL. Maybe save, forward it to your marketing company you might be working with here. Census Business Builder does not appear to be cooperating here with us here today, but that's okay. We were at the tail end of what we wanted to look at within the software anyway. If it does come up, we can dive back in for some other examples. I'm going to switch screens back over to the presentation for a moment to talk about the second half of that, but I do want to pause and look for any questions you might have about either the data or how you can use that data while the screens are switching. Yeah, excellent question about how often the data is updated. So remember a few minutes ago toward the beginning of the presentation, we talked about how some of that demographic data, so where people live, what their ages are, that gets updated yearly in June. You also have some business data that comes out every December. And you have an economic census that talks about where we get the median household income data that comes up every 5 years, but the newest published date for that data will be next month in March. So kind of timely time for us to take a look at it. Back to the presentation though. So we took a look at those, right? We looked at zip codes near us that have people over 65 and an uninsured rate. We looked at zip codes near us that have meet that Michigan Medicaid threshold and have a median income size of 3. And we look for some higher earners. Again, there's lots of different ways you can slice the filters there, lots of different ways you can manipulate those filters to figure out what makes most sense for your business. So the question, of course, is I have this data. I know where people that may need my services are. What do I do with it? And friends, we've got a few answers for you here as well. First things first, though, is no matter what you choose to do out of the laundry list I'm about to give you, remain compliant with the guidelines in your target market or markets. And I use door-to-door, canvassing, that sort of approach as a really kind of off-the-wall example here, but it's really practical because it fits both these markets. In the under 65 market, if you are looking for just marketplace coverage, it's kind of it's getting less Wild West. The CMS is trying to tame the West. But it's kind of the Wild West. You can go door to door to solicit under 65 businesses if you want to, if you have the time to invest or the people to invest. That's absolutely okay. But if you're looking for Medicare business, you cannot go door to door to solicit that, right? That goes against CMS guidelines. And I'll give you a few more reminders here throughout of what you can and can't do in the variety of markets you might use this data for. But always want to say that right up front is always be compliant and remain compliant with the guidelines of the market you are working in. So the question of what you do next is really dependent on what you're willing to spend and what kind of equity, whether it's financial or sweat equity, you're going to put in to growing your business and finding these targets and using this data. If you think of this, what's on your screen here as a sort of continuum, on the left-hand side, you have things that are more expensive with a broader reach for you. On the right-hand side, you have some things that are a little bit less expensive or sometimes no cost, but because of that, they might have a bit of a narrower reach. So we'll start on the left-hand side. We'll talk a bit about what it could be like to partner with a mailing house and work all the way down to referrals as well. Referrals are probably the lifeblood of your business when you're first starting out in either of these markets, whether it's under 65 or over 65. So we'll talk a bit about those here as well. So your first option, of course, is to partner with a mailing house. By mailing house, we mean someone who will handle the mailing to your target list wherever you want to go. And the reason this could make some good sense after visiting Census Business Builder is because you now have cities, you have zip codes, and even individual neighborhoods that could be valuable for you in growing your business. So you can graft more targeted mailings, right? Again, making sure that they are either carrier and or CMS approved, depending on what market you're working in. So you can work with those vendors to kind of get your name out there, build your agency's name. Whether maybe if you have something carrier branded, you're putting a Parent Health Plan, you're putting Priority Health, you're putting United Healthcare in front of your prospects and building that connection with you as well. So one of the pros here, again, is that because you've done your homework, so to speak, is you do have a really good area of what might be target rich for you. One of the downsides, though, is it may not be as cost effective as other options. This is really kind of a shotgun approach. And your cost per lead might be higher than you're willing to stomach, especially if you don't have much of a marketing budget to work with at the moment. But it is an option for you as you go forward. Another way you could go ahead and engage these folks, again, getting a little less expensive here, is every door direct mail. And that is run by the trusty folks over at the United States Postal Service. Again, knowing which cities, zips, and tracks you want to focus on, you can develop some creative and work with them here. Actually, as I mentioned creative, I should go back to mailing houses for just a moment. When I say creative, I mean, what is that flyer going to look like? What is that mailer going to look like? Many of these mailing houses will work with you, especially if you're the target of your campaign is building agency awareness. They'll design the flyer for you and go on and work with that. So that's part of the reason it can be a little bit more expensive. They'll do a lot of the work for you. When you work with USPS, though, over here on every door direct mail, you're likely bringing something to the table for USPS to mail for you. The Postal Service does recommend a few printers and print shops on its website that you can take a look at, but you might as well work with someone local here that can help you out, or again, use pre-approved material from your carrier partners for this purpose as well. Um, this is generally more cost effective than mailing lists. On average, you're looking at just under what the average rate for a non-business piece of mail is. It's somewhere between 38 and 45 cents per piece, again, depending on what it is you're mailing. So that can make it a little more cost friendly. But again, it is more of a shotgun approach, because what you're essentially doing is asking the USPS to deliver this flyer to every door in a zip code, or every door in a census tract, or every door within a city. So it is, again, still more of a shotgun approach. And if you are looking specifically to grow your Medicare business, this particular model might not be the best fit for you, because it's not targeted as tightly on those parameters. Third option, though, and one that can be a lot of fun, and it's relatively cheap, all things considered, compared to the other two, is targeted social media ads. So in just like you would with the mailers here, you're looking to purchase ads in areas and for consumers that are most valuable to you. So when you're looking at social media, not only can you sort of kind of pick a geographic location of, I want to look at people in Southeast Michigan, or I want people in the Flint area, or whatever the case might be. But depending on the platform, you can also zero in and target people over 65, or people working in a specific industry, if that's your jam. There's lots of different ways you can slice and dice that as well. Again, though, with the caveat that any ads you run must be compliant with the rules in your target markets. And I would say that it's still a bit of a shotgun approach, right? But because it's your own lead, your own face, your own name you're putting out there, whatever leads you get from here is a better quality lead than you would get from buying a lead off the street, right? From any of those big lead gen firms that you might be familiar with. Because people already see your face. They know your name in this case. Getting into some of our less expensive options, there is option 4 here, which is getting boots on the ground in the Medicare market. Now, don't take me wrong. I don't mean going door to door. We know that's a bad thing, but there are still some things you can do to build a physical presence in your community. So again, I'm going to say it like 7 more times before we leave today. Stay compliant with CMS guidelines. But here's what you can do. Maybe after you've picked out some cities, some zip codes, some census tracts, those neighborhoods that are valuable to you or might be prospect rich, consider your informal marketing events at places like pharmacies, not again right next to the pharmacy counter, but somewhere off to the side of the pharmacy counter, a few hundred feet away. Look at community centers, look at senior centers, or heck, even the local pickleball court, right? It's getting to be spring season, so all kinds of spring flings and fairs are coming up. Church festivals and carnivals are coming up here as well. So setting up tables and booths at those can be a great boon here to, you can be strategic in deciding where you're going to place those tables and those kiosks that you work at. You can also look for more formal events, right? If you saw, for example, when we were looking for Medicare rich areas, or people who are over 65 rich areas, Southfield has a fantastic library, and it also has a lot of people that are over 65. So lean into that a little bit, right? Schedule a formal marketing event, or a formal or an educational event even at that library, or at a community or senior center, as the case might be. And again, maybe you're not putting planned literature out there at doctor's offices and pharmacies and such, but you can go ahead and put your agency literature on those bulletin boards. Leave business cards with the doctor, right? Leave business cards next to the pharmacy or on a bulletin board. Go to local restaurants, put business cards, flyers, other collateral up there. And you might do that already, but the data we took a look at in the first half of the presentation might give you a better idea of where your more high value targets might be. On the other hand, though, there is the under 65 market, where the rules are a little looser. Again, you do have some CMS guidelines to be aware of here, but there are fewer. But a lot of the same kind of advice applies here. So look at, again, at informal marketing events at your pharmacies and community centers, all those sorts of places. You can look at bulletin boards again and getting out on all those places here as well. But also, again, think about door-to-door being an option here. You don't have this in the Medicare market, but if you were to zero in on the right type of zip code or census tract, so you really have a good idea of where it could be a good fit for marketplace coverage, that's certainly an option and certainly a way to get your name and face out there in the community as well. Option 5 is kind of a riff on option 4 a little bit, but can be a little less expensive, but builds a lot of goodwill in the community. And these are community events and sponsorships. Again, this is like the 7th time I'm saying this, but be compliant with CMS guidelines. But always look for opportunities to sponsor your local businesses or sponsor art fairs and church festivals and things like that. They are always dying for help, right? For gold sponsors, for silver sponsors, for platinum sponsors, for whatever name they have for it, right? So for the cost of $250, you could get your name on a banner, your photo up there, and everyone who goes to that art fair is going to see your name and face and know that you work in insurance and might seek you out there if you have a table there. Same thing for church festivals or so on and so forth. The other thing that is underrated, we think here, talking internally at the office, is PTO or PTA events. Schools are chronically underfunded. I know this. I'm a former teacher myself. They're always looking for help, right? So if you have the ability to, again, make that $50, $100, $250 donation, you're going to get your name on a t-shirt, and every 5th grader at that fun run is going to have your name on the back of that t-shirt. Their parents are going to see their name. Grandma and grandpa is going to see your name on the back of that t-shirt. Everyone's going to see your name on the back of that t-shirt. That could be a really, kind of cheap way to really build word of mouth about you fairly quick. Also not mentioned here, though, is Little League sponsorships here as well. Again, you're maybe looking between $250, $500, so could be steeper, right? Depending, again, on your marketing budget. But spending some time in that arena and putting someone investing there, your name is on the back of all those Little Leagues, or either on the front of those jerseys, so which means mom's going to see it every day, dad's going to see it every day. All their grandparents, their neighbors, their aunts and uncles, when kids wear their jerseys to school, they're going to see it, right? Again, lots of opportunity to build some name recognition and get your name out there. The last thing I want to touch on real quickly is your referral ask. And I'm overstating the obvious here, I think, but many consumers simply don't know how much you rely on referrals. It doesn't cross their minds. So what you can do is educate them with statements like, referrals are the lifeblood of my business, and I really like working with you. If you know someone who's looking for healthcare, I can help. Or who else do you know that needs healthcare coverage? A simple question, simple statements like that to let them know, again, that referrals are how you keep going, right? Especially if you're still striking out in this market, that can be a great asset for you. Would always recommend putting a few business cards in their hand here as well. Studies show that within maybe 2 or 3 weeks after not interacting with you, not hearing from you, you're probably near the back of their mind. But every time they go across that business card, or they see your business card on the fridge, you're right back at the top of mind for another 2 or 3 weeks, right? So that means that's many more times to see your name, many more times to see your phone number, many more times to think of that friend that might need insurance or might have an insurance question that you can help solve. So lots of options here through options 1 through 6 that you can take a look at as you're exploring your business. I do want to pause here for a quick stop and jot before I head into the home stretch of today's presentation. So out of the 6 things we've talked about here today, starting from big mailing campaigns all the way down to really working on the referral ask, which of those strategies seems most doable for you at the moment, and why? Why does it seem accessible for you? Go ahead and put a few words in the chat for me, please. Yeah, absolutely. Lots of opportunities to get involved with local schools, right? And to build that sort of sponsorship relationship. There is an agency and not there that is probably 2 blocks away from the elementary school where my son currently goes to school or would be in school if he didn't have pink eye. And their names all over everything, right? I know them also because of where I work here. I have the privilege of working here at Action Benefits, but I do see their names almost everywhere. Uh, it's really mind-boggling, I guess, how often they get their names out there in the community, right? And how much that does for their word of mouth and their reach within the community. Sometimes you got to spend money to make money, and those smaller investments can, yield you bigger dividends as you go forward. All that said, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to thank you for your time and attention here today. Promised you about 45 or so minutes of content. We're right here, right about there. You can always, what is going on here, computer? You can always reach out to us here at on LinkedIn at the Action Benefits Company. Email us at info@actionbenefits.com or reach our main line 248-356-8585. Now, the one thing I do want to point out is at the top of the hour, I did mention that we do have some marketing dollars available. Still to our agents here. If you're on the phone with me, maybe you want to perk up a little bit if you drifted off, because I'm going to tell you about those marketing dollars here. Every agent that we work with here, at least until the new CMS final rule goes into effect in March or April and what that says, but every agent that we work with in the Medicare market, if you've got at least one Medicare carrier with us and some business to go with it, we do offer to reimburse our agents up to $1,000 for their marketing expenses that year. It's not a no questions asked reimbursement. We do have to ask some questions to make sure that you're not running afoul of Medicare, marketing guidelines and those sorts of things. But that is an offer that's on the table for many of our agents. So if you are thinking about where your next mailing campaign is going to go, or maybe you already have some mailers out there in the field and you're thinking about that, or even your next social media buy, go ahead and make that social media buy and talk to your account manager here at Action Benefits. They're happy to help you access those funds. If you don't know who your account manager is, please feel free to reach out to us at info@Action Benefits or reach out to me, Randy Lober here. I'm happy to hook you up with that and make sure that we are making selling insurance even easier for you every time you hit the streets. All that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your time and attention here today. I will stick around for any questions you might have, either about that program or anything we've talked about here today. But other than that, it is about 10:45, nearing the top of the hour. You must have appointments to get to. I won't shame you for taking a breather before you get to your next appointment. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your days and look forward to seeing you again at another Action Academy session. Thanks and have a great day.